1,600,000 AI agents have accounts on a social network. So these aren't users commanding agents or giving agents prompts, mostly anyway. These are agents themselves. They are posting, replying, building a reputation. This is Moltbook. Most of you have heard of it. It's a platform designed from the ground up for autonomous software entities to interact with one another. And they just got acquired by Meta and folded into Meta's superintelligence labs. Also, on the same day, a federal judge told a different AI agent that it's not allowed to go shopping. So Judge Maxine Chesney ordered Perplexity to shut down its Comet browser agent being able to go in and purchase things on Amazon for you. She ruled that there's strong evidence that it accessed user accounts without authorization. So not without the user's authorization, though. This is without Amazon's. So here we are. A social network for agents gets absorbed into the largest social media company on Earth. An agent acts on behalf of a human and gets blocked by a court for entering a digital storefront. And over at Anthropic, a new 30-person institute opens its doors to study what all of this is doing to us. The agents have arrived, and now the question is who gets to decide where they can go? So what makes today distinctive isn't just that AI agents are colliding with existing institutions, but it's that every layer of the response is activating all at once, and none of them can agree on what the problem is. The court sees trespass. Amazon sees Perplexity's agent impersonating a Chrome browser and placing orders without their platform consent. Now, the legal framework invoked, which is the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, that was written for hackers, not for shopping assistants that your user explicitly told to go buy something. Now, Perplexity sees gatekeeping, and their spokesperson framed it as a fight over whether you have the right to choose your own AI. Anthropic sees a civilizational knowledge gap going on here. Jack Clark launched the Anthropic Institute specifically to study questions like what happened to jobs, whether AI makes societies safer, how machine values might shape human ones. These are questions nobody has institutional bandwidth to process at the speed that they're arriving. So that's what the Institute is meant to do. And meanwhile, on the engineering floor at one of the largest technology companies on Earth, a quieter emergency is slowly unfolding. Again at Amazon, Amazon convened its engineers after a trend of production outages caused by AI-generated code. Their website went down for nearly 6 hours. The response was a new rule. Senior engineers must personally sign off on every AI-assisted code change before it even touches production. So that's a governance structure invented under pressure. Not designed in advance, not legislated, not debated, just the systems broke, so they built a checkpoint. And that's happening at the same company that laid off 30,000 employees in 4 months and tracks remaining engineers on their AI adoption metrics. So today doesn't really feel like a debate about whether agents should exist. It feels like a moment when every institution simultaneously realizes the agents are already here and nobody built the hallways to accommodate them. All right, let's go deeper on some things here. So let me start with the Perplexity ruling because I think its implications really extend far beyond one shopping bot. So the core legal question here is deceptively simple. A user has an Amazon account. The user tells the AI agent to go buy something on that account, and the agent does. Amazon says that's unauthorized access, even though the user authorized it. But Amazon didn't authorize it, and that's the key. So whose authorization really matters here? Because under existing law, there's no clear answer. The Computer Fraud and Abuse Act was written in 1986, and it was designed for a world where access was either human or it wasn't. The emergence of an intermediary layer, an AI agent carrying genuine user intent into a platform that didn't consent to its presence, that creates a category that the statute simply didn't have a vocabulary for. And then the technical allegations make it harder to sympathize with Perplexity specifically. Amazon claims that Comet disguised itself as Google Chrome. And if that's true, then it's not just accessing without authorization. It's actively concealing the nature of that access. So that's a different thing than a transparent agent knocking on the front door. So it's still an open question on that point. But here's what really matters beyond just this case. Every agentic AI system now has to answer this question. When Claude Code submits a pull request on GitHub, when Google's Gemini edits a shared document, when Microsoft's Copilot Cowork coming in now fires off emails from your calendar, each of those is an agent acting inside a third-party platform on a user's behalf. So the boundary that Judge Chesney just drew will have to shape how every one of those interactions gets designed, not in the abstract, but in the next software update. So the 7-day stay before enforcement means that Perplexity can appeal, but the structural precedent is already propagating, of course. So platform consent is now a judicially recognized concept for AI agents, and we got there through litigation, not legislation. So the rules for how autonomous systems move through digital infrastructure are being written one lawsuit at a time. All right, now the Anthropic Institute. I want to be really precise about why this is structurally new and not just a corporate rebranding exercise. AI companies have had safety teams. They have had policy teams. They've had economists on retainer. What Anthropic did today, though, is different. They merged three previously separate functions: societal impact analysis, frontier red teaming, and economic research into a single organizational unit with co-founder leadership. Jack Clark isn't a VP they hired. He's a co-founder. So he built the company, and he's now running an institution within the institution whose explicit job is to study the second-order consequences of what Anthropic itself is creating. So let's look at the founding team here. Matt Botvinnik from Google DeepMind, studying AI's impact on the legal system. Zoe Hitzig, who left OpenAI after they introduced advertising into ChatGPT, leading economic research. Anton Korinek from the University of Virginia on labor and macroeconomic implications. So these aren't lobbyists. They're researchers with real track records in the exact domains that this technology is shaping. Clark's comments about this timing are revealing. He said that the Pentagon confrontation, the lawsuits, the blacklist, the constitutional standoff that documented in this newsletter since early March has affirmed Anthropic's decision to release more public research. He described a hunger for a larger national conversation by the public about this technology, and the Institute's research agenda reads like a syllabus for that very conversation. What happens to economies? Whether AI introduces new categories of danger, how machine values might reshape human values, whether humans can maintain control. Now, can an internal research institute genuinely study the consequences of the company that funds it? That is a very fair question. Clark says that he has no concerns about that, no concerns about long-term funding, and arguing that people tend to buy trust. So Anthropic is reportedly planning an IPO this year, but the Anthropic Institute is in part a trust-generating mechanism for the company at a moment when the trust is the scarcest resource the company has due to the Pentagon debacle. But here's what I think is actually interesting about it. The question the Institute was designed to study, labor displacement, societal risk, the alignment of machine and human values, are precisely the questions that no existing institution is equipped to process at the speed they're arriving. Universities work on journal timelines. Government agencies work on budget cycles. Think tanks work on grant applications. The Institute, this one, can work on the same timeline as the technology itself. So whether that's a feature or a bug depends on whether you think the organization causing the disruption can also be trusted to understand it. But what's undeniable is the gap exists and someone is trying to fill it. All right, let's shift over to the Amazon story. This is the one that I really want people to sit with here because details are extraordinary. An engineer identified in The Guardian's reporting, only as Dina, obviously pseudonymous, described her job transforming from writing code to fixing what artificial intelligence breaks. That's a quote. Another engineer reported AI assistants being genuinely helpful, roughly 1 time in 3. Multiple employees are described as being tracked on AI adoption metrics, measured on how much they use the tools, while simultaneously finding those tools counterproductive, generating, as one put it, more work for everyone. But then there's the outages. Amazon's internal briefing note described a trend of incidents involving Gen AI-assisted changes with high blast radius. So the website, it went down for nearly 6 hours. The company's response, requiring senior engineer approval for all AI-assisted code changes, that is the first enterprise-scale governance layer specifically for AI-generated code at a company of this size. So this connects to something we've been tracking. On March 8th, you'll remember, Block employees reported that 95% of AI-generated code requires human revision before it meets their production standards. Anthropic's own labor study on March 7th identified a gap between AI's theoretical capability coverage, 94% of tasks, and the actual workplace adoption, which sits at 33%. Today's Amazon data fills in the texture of that gap. It's not that people are slow to adopt, it's that the tools at current capability levels create new categories of work as fast as they can eliminate the old ones. So here's where I want to push past where most commentary stops on this. This is not an argument that AI coding tools don't work. It's evidence of something more interesting. The transition from human-written to AI-assisted to AI-generated code is going to be messier, more iterative, and more dependent on human judgment than anyone's execution narrative has suggested so far. The governance structures, like Amazon's new senior engineer checkpoint, are being invented under operational pressure in real time because nobody designed them in advance. So what emerges from that pressure is actually valuable. Every production failure generates a new protocol. Every hallucinated function that breaks a deployment teaches the organization something about where the current capability boundary sits. The question isn't whether AI will eventually write most production code. It's what the path between here and there looks like for the millions of engineers walking it right now. So today we got the most detailed picture yet, and it looks a lot like the humans cleaning up after the machines for now, while being measured on how enthusiastically they do so. Obviously, that will change in probably the near future, but for now, that's where things sit. Okay, let's zoom back and let's look at the overall arcs, how today has fit into the larger story of what we've been looking at on this podcast for a while. The agentic governance arc has moved faster than almost anything we track. On March 9th, Bloomberg Law surfaced the question of whether an AI agent can serve as a legal trustee, the OpenClaw case. 2 days later, today, a federal judge established the first liability boundary for agents transacting inside commercial platforms. So just in 72 hours, AI agent governance went from theoretical legal scholarship to active judicial enforcement. So this is not incremental. That's a phase change in how quickly the legal system is processing through these questions. Now, the labor arc is also accumulating something really specific. March 7th, Anthropic study documents a 61% gap between capability coverage and actual adoption. March 8th blocks 95% revision rate. Workers training their AI replacements. Today, Amazon's engineers are describing AI as a net increase in workload, tracked on adoption while finding the tools counterproductive. So each data point confirms the same structure from a different angle. The displacement is real, but so is the fact that the current generation of tools is generating new labor as fast as it's eliminating the old. So what the next generation does, the one that closes this quality gap, that is the transition point to watch. All right, on energy, the base power deal brings the community energy arc to a threshold. So we've been tracking distributed infrastructure since New Orleans citywide virtual power plant and the wave of VPP legislation in late February. Today, a single utility partnership reached 100 megawatts, peaker plant scale, assembled house by house across 5,000 Texas homes. Combined with PG&E's smart panel pilot in California and the net metering 3.0 ruling that was upheld on appeal, the distributed grid is no longer just policy aspiration. This is a deployable architecture. The grid that emerges from this decade won't just be cleaner, it'll be structurally distributed in ways that solve and dissolve the line between who produces power and who consumes it. Okay, so let's talk about today's human voice segment. So Peter Diamandis and the crew from the Moonshots podcast all on stage talking about what they talk about in the podcast, but live and talking through what happens when AI crystallizes into utility layer. So I chose this because they're making specific claims that's worth hearing alongside today's signal. Their argument is that deflationary abundance, radically lower costs across energy, intelligence, healthcare, education, is not aspirational, as we've been hearing here on the Century Report. It's the consequence of infrastructure already being built. And today's stories are the texture of that building. Messy, contested, legally uncertain, generating friction at every interface, but building. So the link's in the newsletter, and it is worth your time. So let's talk a bit about what shipped today. So Google rolled out new Gemini features across their workspace. Full draft document generation pulling from Gmail, Chat, Drive, and the web. Autonomous spreadsheet manipulation that hit state-of-the-art on the spreadsheet bench. AI stylization in slides. Context-aware retrieval in Drive. Rolling out first to AI Pro and Ultra subscribers. NVIDIA announced DLSS 4.5 with second generation transformer super resolution and 6 times multi-frame generation for RTX 50 series. Plus, expanded ACE capabilities at GDC. So this is the first on-device production quality text-to-speech and small language model for AI-powered game characters. So that's pretty amazing, and that was all released since yesterday. Let's close with the thread, as always. So here's what I keep finding myself thinking about as I create the Century Report. So look at the world right now. 1,600,000 agents on a social network. An agent now blocked from a storefront. A new institution built to study what agents do to human societies. And now a new human engineering rule. A human must approve every change an agent makes before it ships. Obviously, the agents aren't coming. We know this. We are living through the age of agentic AI. They are here. They have accounts. They place orders. They write code that breaks production systems. They review each other's pull requests. And as of today, they have their first legal boundary, their first institutional observer, and their first mandatory human checkpoint. So what I want you to carry out the door is this. Every single one of those responses, the court order, the institute, the engineering mandate, they were all reactive. They were built after the agents arrived, not before. They've been around for a while, right? The hallways are being constructed around traffic that's already flowing. So very soon, we need to watch for whether Perplexity appeals and what other agentic AI companies do in response. Because if the ruling stands, then every agent that interacts with a third-party platform might eventually end up needing platform consent, not just user consent. And that reshapes the entire architecture of agent commerce right now. Agent productivity, agent anything. The boundary just moved, and everyone building the agents will feel it. All right, we'll see you tomorrow.